Your kid stole $8,000 from the fund, my dad accused. My brother barked. We caught him on camera. My son could barely breathe. I just showed the video. 5 minutes later, my brother's wife covered her mouth. I never thought I'd have to defend my own son from my family. I never thought they'd turn on us like that, with no warning, no conversation, just an accusation thrown like a brick through a window. But that's exactly what happened last Tuesday. And it wasn't just about money. It was about control, lies, and something much uglier slithering right under our roof. We all live in the same house. My parents, my teenage son Dylan, and me, my brother Jared, and now his new wife Maddie. They got married 5 months ago. Maddie moved in a week after the wedding with a suitcase full of beige sweaters and a voice that could make your ears bleed if you disagreed with her for more than 30 seconds. Something shifted after she arrived. The house didn't feel like home anymore. At first, it was little things. My mom's bracelet went missing, then turned up in the laundry room drawer. Dad's wedding ring vanished for 2 days. Maddie blamed my son. Dylan, of course, said teenagers were sneaky. Jared nodded along like a wind-up puppet. But then something bigger happened. My dad has this fund. It's not a bank account. It's cash, emergency money. He keeps it in a locked drawer in his office, and only Jared and I know where the key is. It's been like that for years. We were raised to be responsible for it. There was over $8,000 in there last month, and now it was gone. Completely. Every dollar. And guess who they blamed? I was in the kitchen when it happened. My dad came storming in with the key still in his hand, yelling that someone had emptied the drawer. Jared was behind him, all red in the face. Maddie stood in the hallway with her arms crossed, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Jared said they had proof, that they'd seen Dylan sneaking around near the office. Maddie claimed she'd seen him with the key once. My dad looked like he was about to explode. Dylan was sitting at the table with his cereal, completely stunned. The poor kid could barely breathe. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just asked them to give me 5 minutes. Then I walked straight to my room, took out my phone, and pulled up the footage, because 2 weeks earlier, I'd installed a small security camera inside the office. No one knew except for my mother. I didn't even tell Dylan. I had a gut feeling something was off, and my mom agreed. She's old, but she sees things more clearly than the rest of us sometimes. I pressed play, and what we saw in that video is what started everything. 5 minutes later, Maddie was standing in the middle of the room, staring at the screen. Her hand flew up and covered her mouth, because it wasn't Dylan. It was her. Her and someone none of us recognized. That's when I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. This was war. I paused the footage. No one said anything. The sound of the refrigerator buzzing in the background was the only thing keeping the room from going completely still. The video showed Maddie, plain as day, entering my dad's office with the key already in her hand. That part alone was enough. But then she turned toward the hallway and waved someone in. A man followed her inside. None of us recognized him. Tall, thin, buzzed hair, dark sunglasses, the kind of look you don't forget if you've seen it before. I hadn't. Neither had my dad. He looked like he belonged in a parking lot trade, not walking through our hallway in the middle of the day. They talked for a second. Then Maddie reached for the drawer, my dad's drawer, the emergency fund drawer. She opened it, pulled out stacks of cash, and handed them to the guy. He shoved them into a weathered brown leather bag. She kept glancing toward the door, like she was expecting someone to come back. The whole thing took maybe a minute and a half. Then they both walked out. I didn't say a word. I just let it play again. Maddie had her hand over her mouth. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was frozen. My brother Jared was pale, like he just realized he'd left the oven on 6 hours ago. His mouth opened, then closed. Then he turned to Maddie and asked who the man was. She didn't answer. He asked again, still nothing. Then my dad leaned forward and asked her if this was the first time. Maddie snapped. Not crying. Yelling. Not at the stranger in the footage, or even at Jared, but at me. Said I was sick for recording people in their own house. Said I violated her privacy. Said the real issue wasn't what I'd shown, but the fact that I'd been watching like a stalker. She thought she could flip the narrative, make it about me being paranoid. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I walked to my room and pulled out the little carved box where I kept the spare key, opened it. I came back down and showed them. She'd taken my copy of the key, too. The room cracked open. Then Maddie kept ranting about how she needed the money for something urgent, that we didn't understand what she was going through, that she was under financial pressure. She mentioned medical bills. Who, she didn't say. Claimed we'd find out soon enough. But it was all lies. You could see it. She wasn't scared. She was caught. My mom didn't say much, but she stood behind me the whole time. She knew something had been off for a while. That's why she agreed to the camera in the first place. Dylan had disappeared to his room by then. He hadn't even spoken once since the accusations earlier. My heart was torn between wanting to comfort him and wanting to set fire to every lie Maddie had built in this house. That night, Jared didn't sleep in their room. He stayed in the basement, lights off, probably trying to decide whether to believe his eyes or his ego. But the next morning was worse. I went to check my drawer, the small metal one in the corner of my closet where I kept my own savings. $2,000. All gone. No one else even knew it was there, except for maybe one person. I checked the camera feed again. Nothing. She'd learned her lesson. This time, she avoided the office, avoided any place I'd likely have wired. I stared at the empty drawer, fists clenched. My savings were gone. Dylan's name was still floating in the air from the day before, and Maddie was still sleeping upstairs like she didn't torch this house from the inside out. But I wasn't just going to take it, because if she thought she could steal from my family, destroy my kid's name, and get away with it, she had no idea who she'd declared war on. I didn't say a word the next morning. No outburst, no confrontation. I made my coffee, sat at the table like nothing had happened, and watched Maddie float around the kitchen like she owned the place. She smiled like yesterday had just evaporated, like no one had seen her hand cash to a stranger in my father's office. That's how I knew she wasn't done. She thought she'd survived the worst part. She actually believed it was over. Jared wouldn't look at me. He sat on the couch, half pretending to scroll through his phone. I could tell he hadn't slept. My dad barely touched his breakfast. My mom had that quiet, sharp way about her, the way she got when she was past anger. And Dylan, he stayed in his room all day, wouldn't even open the door when I knocked. So I gave Maddie space. I didn't press anything. I made her feel safe again. Then I got to work. I moved the cameras, not just the office. I placed 2 more in hidden spots I knew she'd never notice. One pointed toward the back hallway where my room was, another in the shared upstairs room. I even rigged an old phone with a motion sensor app in the laundry closet. My mom helped. She was the only one who didn't question what I was doing. I started checking the footage every night. The first 2 days, nothing. Maddie avoided my side of the house completely. Jared kept to himself. It was like everyone was just waiting for someone else to move first. But then, on the 3rd night, at exactly 2:43 a.m., she struck again. She came down the hall in socks, walked straight past the bathroom, and opened the storage room door. She stayed in there for 5 minutes. When she came out, she was holding something wrapped in a dish towel. It looked like a bundle of paper, folded and pressed flat. I paused the footage and zoomed in. It was a folder, one of mine. I ran upstairs and opened the old metal cabinet where I kept all my important documents, birth certificates, bank letters, school forms, even the title to my car. The folder was missing. It wasn't about the money anymore. Maddie was after something else now, something bigger. The next morning, I confronted her in the hallway. Not about the folder, not about the footage. I just asked if she had borrowed anything from my cabinet. She said she had no idea what I was talking about. Called me paranoid again. Asked if I needed to see someone. I smiled, not because she was winning, but because I had everything I needed. She wasn't stealing randomly. She was going for leverage. She wanted to trap me in some kind of scheme, maybe fake an identity, mess with my credit. Who knows? She wasn't just greedy. She was strategic and stupid enough to think I wouldn't see the pattern. That night, I called a friend who worked at a private financial firm, told him I needed help checking my credit, my accounts, anything suspicious. He agreed to help and flagged something right away, a recent attempt to apply for a personal loan under my name, flagged due to mismatched information. She was trying to dig under my life. Now I knew what I had to do. I didn't go to the police, not yet. Instead, I decided to burn everything she was building, slowly, deliberately, from the inside. If she thought she was the only one who could manipulate this house, she was about to learn what it feels like to play against someone who's already seen the end of the story. I started keeping a notebook, every movement, every lie, every item that disappeared from the house. I wasn't even trying to prove anything to the others. At this point, I already knew what she was. I just wanted to track the exact moment everything would collapse under her. And then something unexpected happened. A phone buzzed under the couch. Not mine, not Dylan's, not anyone's we recognized. I was vacuuming behind the cushions while Maddie and Jared were out supposedly running errands when I heard it. It was tucked deep behind the frame, wrapped in an old sock, a cheap burner phone, the kind you buy with cash at a gas station. I stood there holding it like it was made of fire. There were texts on it, recent ones, dozens of them. I didn't even need the password. It was unlocked. You got the rest? Don't forget the glove box. Meet Sunday, 3 p.m., same place. Most of the numbers weren't saved, but one contact had a name, Kay. The last message from Kay was sent the night she stole my documents. He's on to you. Don't screw this up. I took photos of every screen. When Maddie got back that evening, I didn't say anything. Just asked how the errands went. She smiled, said they picked up groceries but forgot the dog food. We don't even have a dog. I told her I'd found an old phone under the couch. Her eyes flicked just for a second. I held up a different phone, an old broken one I'd dug from a drawer upstairs. Told her I thought it was Dylan's from years ago. She didn't say a word. She was panicking. Jared didn't seem to notice anything. He was already halfway checked out emotionally. He was quieter around her, more distant. I think deep down he knew what was going on, but didn't want to admit how far it had gone. But I did something then even I wasn't expecting. I planted a lie that night. I let it slip loudly enough for Maddie to hear from the hallway that I'd spoken to the bank. That someone tried to access a safe deposit box that wasn't in my name. That I'd be getting the footage from the bank security camera in a couple of days. There was no safe deposit box, there was no footage coming. But 2 hours later, Maddie left the house alone. And when she came back, she was sweating. No groceries, no bag, nothing. The next morning, the burner phone was gone. She must have come back for it after I pretended not to know what it really was, but I already had the screenshots. And what happened that weekend cracked everything wide open. I was out in the backyard with Dylan, finally getting him to come out for some air. We were throwing a football back and forth when a car pulled into the driveway. Not just any car, a black Honda with tinted windows. The same man from the footage stepped out. He didn't come to the door. He didn't even look at the house. He popped the trunk and pulled something out, a manila envelope. He walked it over to Maddie, who was already outside waiting. She looked panicked and then furious. They argued. She kept saying something about, "Not now," and "I said I'd handle it." I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. He told her I knew. I recorded the whole thing from my bedroom window. Jared wasn't home. My dad was asleep. My mom had gone grocery shopping. And that man handed Maddie the envelope anyway. She ripped it open, looked inside, and her whole body went stiff. Then she lit it on fire, right there in the driveway. She actually burned whatever was inside and stomped it out like a lunatic. That was it. I wasn't waiting anymore. I uploaded the footage of their little driveway exchange, combined it with the screenshots from the burner phone, and sent it all anonymously to Jared's email. I didn't even sign my name. I just waited. Jared didn't say a word for 2 days. Not to me, not to Maddie. He moved through the house like he was watching a slow-motion train wreck. I knew he'd seen the email. I'd set a tracker, and he'd opened it 3 times. So he kept quiet until Saturday night. I heard the crash from upstairs, something shattered, then yelling. Not the usual kind. This was loud, final. Jared wasn't asking questions anymore. He was accusing. I stayed downstairs listening. He had printed every screenshot, every frame of the footage. He asked her who Kay was. She tried the usual lies, claimed it was edited, said I had it out for her, but Jared didn't flinch. He already knew. The man in the video wasn't a stranger to her. His name was Kyle, an old coworker she used to hang around with before they got married. A guy with a record and a history of side hustles. Then came the part that surprised even me. Jared had called Kyle. He confessed everything. Said Maddie promised him a cut of whatever she pulled from the house. They planned to blame Dylan from the beginning. Said she told him our family was too soft to notice. That's when Jared snapped. He told her to pack and leave. She refused. Said she was his wife. Said he couldn't just throw her out. Started shouting legal threats. Then Jared did something none of us expected. He pulled out the prenup. He'd signed it before the wedding. My parents insisted. The house wasn't hers. Nothing in it was. She had no claim. The next morning, she was gone. No bags, no apology, no explanation. Just gone. But the damage was still unfolding. I found out later she'd already opened a credit card under my name. Only a few charges, but enough to force me to freeze my credit and start the whole mess of fixing things. Jared kept checking in. Quiet, respectful. I wasn't ready to forgive him. He'd stood silent when Dylan was accused, but then he asked to speak to Dylan privately. They sat outside for 20 minutes. No yelling, no tears, just a quiet talk between uncle and nephew. And that night, for the first time in weeks, we sat down together at the table, one seat empty. Dinner was quiet, not tense, just unfamiliar, like we were all waiting to see if the balance would hold. My dad passed the salad to my mom like nothing had happened. Jared didn't touch his food much. Dylan kept his headphones draped around his neck, but he didn't check out like before. He was present. That was the first win. We didn't talk about Maddie, not directly, just talked about work, school, how the neighborhood's been getting louder at night, the kind of small things that feel huge when you've spent weeks living under accusations and silence. But after dinner, Jared stayed behind while I cleaned up. He didn't say much until I turned off the faucet. He told me everything. Maddie had been lying long before the money went missing. She owed people, real people, not just debt collectors. She was in deep. Kyle was just one of several she'd been using. Jared had started noticing gaps in their accounts, small ones at first. Then the cash vanished, and when she didn't flinch, he knew. He said he didn't want to believe it. That's why he turned on Dylan so fast. It was easier to blame a teenager than admit he'd married a con artist. I didn't let him off easy. I told him what it felt like to watch my son break down while his uncle stared him down over $8,000. Jared didn't argue. He just nodded and said he'd never forget it. Then he handed me an envelope. Inside was the money. All of it. He said he'd taken it from Maddie's things the morning she left. She'd hidden it in the lining of a suitcase she never used. He figured she didn't get a chance to move it before she burned the envelope Kyle gave her. He could have kept it or returned it to my dad, but he gave it to me. Told me to use it however I needed. For Dylan. For peace of mind. For a lockbox that only I knew about. The next day, Dylan asked if we could all go out for breakfast. We went to a diner we hadn't been to in over a year. My mom ordered the same thing she always used to. My dad actually laughed at one of Dylan's jokes. Jared paid the bill without saying a word. We got back to the house, and for a minute no one moved. Then my dad said it, the one thing no one had dared bring up. He said, "We're going to be okay now." And somehow I believed him. Maddie was gone. The lies, the theft, the poison she poured into this house, it was all out in the open. Now what she tried to break didn't fall apart. It bent. And now it's straightening back out. There's an empty chair at the table, and for once, it feels right. That weekend, Dylan helped my dad clean out the garage. They found an old box of his childhood toys and spent an hour going through them like it was treasure. My mom baked a pie just because. Jared started staying upstairs again, sleeping in his old room instead of the basement. No one said it out loud, but things were starting to stitch themselves back together. Slow, uneven, but real. One night I caught Dylan standing in the hallway outside the office, just staring at the door. I asked if he was okay. He nodded and said, "It doesn't feel heavy anymore." Neither did the house. And for the first time in a long time, I knew he was right. We'd survived the fire. And in the ashes, somehow, we found something worth keeping.